The untold tragic story of Hugo Boss. We all know about Hugo Boss. I mean, it has to be one of the most luxurious brands in men's fashion, but little do we know about the story of its namesake and creator, Hugo Boss. The man who created the company has a tragic yet dark past that no one ever talks about. Today we will be talking about the tragic story of Hugo Boss. It might seem like an extravagant brand, but trust me when I say that its beginnings weren't like this. I'm sure you're wondering, what's the story of its creator? How is it tragic? And how did the fortunes of his company change? Well, stick around to the end as we answer these questions and more and delve into the depths of his dark past. Without any further ado, let's begin. First, let's talk about the upbringing of Hugo Boss. Born in Germany in 1885, Boss was the youngest of Louis and Henrik Boss's 5 children when he was born in Mitzington, Kingdom of Württemberg. He was raised in a strict religious family, and you can safely say that he didn't have a fun childhood like most children of his age and was expected to follow the rules and behave in a proper manner. On the bright side, however, it made him a person with a good work ethic. When he was eligible, Boss served his country in the military from 1903 to 1905. After that, he worked as an apprentice merchant, and when that didn't work out, he took a job in a Constance weaving mill. But working for another clothing mill or store wasn't his end goal. His parents had a lingerie store in Mitzingen, and in 1908, as the heir, he took over it. But that wasn't the end of Boss's career in clothing. After completing his apprenticeships in tailoring, Hugo opened his own store in 1924, selling men's suits and accessories. This was the actual birth of the company that we know and love today. Initially, his businesses were proving to be a success, and people liked his designs. It looked like the man was set for life. But like all things, this success was unfortunately short-lived. This was the time when the Great Depression was plaguing businesses all over the world. Lots of businesses and people were going bankrupt and were forced to close down their places of employment. Similarly, Boss also suffered the same fate due to unfavorable conditions and had to close down his shop. And I'm sure you're thinking now, if he closed down his shop, how is he such a big brand that he is today? Well, even though Boss had just closed down his shop, his dream of running a successful clothing business was far from dead. He just needed the opportunity. And that opportunity came knocking on his door when the Nazi Party grew to power. And things take a dark turn here. Boss joined the Nazi Party in 1931 and soon became an influential member. He used his expertise in clothing and reopened the Hugo Boss brand to supply the Nazi army with suits. If you look at old photos of Nazi officers wearing all-black suits, these were made by the Hugo Boss company. That's not all. He was also responsible for making the brown and black uniforms of the Hitler Youth. This must have really helped his brand achieve the recognition it needed, and it did them a lot of good too, as Hugo Boss was rewarded financially for his help. And unfortunately, it raised his stature in the Nazi ranks. But the fact that it was made for people that have committed the biggest mass genocide in the known history of mankind makes it questionable. And this would really come back to hurt his business later on, as you will soon learn. Unfortunately, that wasn't even the worst part. 140 forced workers, mostly women, were employed by Hugo Boss during the war. In addition to these employees, the business owned 40 French prisoners of war for a brief period of time between October 1940 and April 1941. Now, that is just downright cruel if you ask me, and as you can see, Hugo Boss has quite a dark past. Something which probably isn't always talked about. His commitment to the Nazi Party was apparent in his obvious admiration of Hitler. He has a photo of himself with Hitler in his flat from 1945, taken at the Berghof, Hitler's Obselberg hideaway. It is quite weird to think that the founder of one of the biggest brands in men's fashion used to be friends with one of the biggest mass murderers of all time. Well, we got a little sidetracked there, but let's keep on going with our story. Boss continued to provide designs for the Nazis until they were defeated. As you all know, the Germans were severely punished for the extent of war crimes they committed. The Allied parties signed agreements through which every company and person responsible for aiding, providing, and supporting the Nazis through either a financial or physical way was to be held responsible, as their support ultimately led to the deaths of thousands and millions. And there is no way that the Hugo Boss company was going to be spared. They made all the uniforms after all, and as a result, their factory was destroyed, and it marked the end of their reign of providing suits to the Nazi army. And that's not all, as Boss was first designated during the denazification process as an active supporter and benefactor of National Socialism, which resulted in a hefty punishment and the loss of his right to vote or operate a business. However, this first decision was overturned, and Boss was then given a new label, Follower, which carries a less severe penalty. But still, it really tarnished his reputation and swept aside the effort he had made to put into his company for all those years. After World War II, Hugo Boss Company was in a difficult financial situation due to the destruction of their factory. It was their main source of income, of course, and its destruction would leave them struggling financially. Boss himself was banned, so he couldn't do anything about changing the fortunes of his company he had worked so hard to start. But his son-in-law, Eugene Hawley, picked up the pieces and assumed control and management of the Hugo Boss Company. While his son-in-law became the boss, Boss's health started to decline. Even if he hadn't been banned, he wouldn't have been able to manage or run a company. And as it turned out, Boss died of natural causes in 1948 at the age of 65. He had been suffering from heart and kidney problems for previous years, and his death was not a surprise given his condition. Well, despite the death of his father-in-law, Hawley continued to run the company and strive to make it a profitable business. Following a period of providing work uniforms, the business received its first order for men's suits in 1950. And this was the first time the company had shifted from making uniforms and instead started to make suits for men. The business boomed and the public liked the designs, which led to an increase in staff to 150 by the end of the year. These suits were mostly made on demand because of the size of the customer, but seeing the response and their popularity, the business started making ready-made suits in 1960. Hawley had really transformed the company and set the foundation for a successful future going forward. He retired in 1969, leaving the business to his sons Jochen and Yui, who started doing business abroad. The manufacturing was there, the demand was there. What Boss needed was proper branding, and they were set to become an international name. His sons became responsible for the first suits bearing the Boss name, which were created in 1970. But it was not until 1977 that the company officially registered its trademark. From there, they just climbed up, step by step, refining their quality, bringing in new product lines such as perfumes, and soon became a force in the men's fashion industry worldwide. Throughout his career, Boss was known for his attention to detail and quality craftsmanship. He believed that the clothing should reflect the personality of the wearer and be comfortable and stylish at the same time. His designs were popular among celebrities and politicians of the time, and his legacy has continued to influence fashion today. Well, that's all, folks. I really hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, smash that like button. I think we cleared up everything there is to know about the untold tragic story of Hugo Boss. But if you're still having questions, let us know in the comments below. We value your feedback and would love to respond, so don't hesitate to leave a note. Lastly, subscribe to the channel if you want to see similar videos, and I will see you in the next one.